I'm an organist, a TikToker, and a performer. But today I want to tell you about my real job. My real job is in a church. Why do I want to tell you about it? Because it's really interesting. I mean, how much time have you spent talking to church organists about churches and working in them? Yeah, exactly. So stick around. I want to show you some of the stories and some of the history of just one parish in Worcester, Massachusetts. Being in Massachusetts, well, it's tough to be a church. Massachusetts is one of the least religious places in the whole Western Hemisphere. But Worcester is a super interesting city. Full of immigrants who came from all over the world to work in the mills, the city's diverse and it has a wealth of cultural expressions. I've played concerts all over the world. I went to Oberlin Conservatory, I got a graduate degree in historical performance and organ. I went to Yale University for another degree. And I thought I would go across the planet to change the world in ways I'd never imagined. And then I took this job about 1 mile from the hospital I was born in. Not exactly the millennial dream. And yet, it is kind of a dream. I love it here. And the city's changed a lot, and yet it stayed the same. And I'm a part of it. And so are my friends and my colleagues. It's incredible to be able to work at a place that's dynamic, changing, reinventing itself, where there's great music, a wonderful choir, great community, and where I can play the organ in a place I love. So while I still travel, I still play concerts, I still do various things, I really want to show you the main thing that I do most days, because it's really interesting. The people are interesting, the community's interesting, the stories are interesting. Just give it a watch. Trust me, it's really cool.
I'm Brent Newberry. I am the pastor here at First Baptist. I've been here since 2015. I'm one of 21 senior pastors over the years, and I've been very fortunate and grateful to be in a congregation like this, one that has both history and a lot of past actions towards social justice and to embody our faith in ways that really speak to my passions and my theology and obviously that of the congregation overall. So First Baptist began in 1812, so we've been around a little while. The way we started, there was only a handful of Baptists in the area. Outside of Worcester proper, there were still Baptist churches within Worcester County, but within Worcester itself, not so much. And the Congregational Church was the state church at the time. There was an individual named James Wilson who was the postmaster, and he was Baptist. He was from England, and he started gathering people in his home throughout 1811 and 1812. And he had various itinerant preachers and well-known clergy to come and join in his home. In December of 1812, the church formally became a church, gathered as a church, wrote a constitution, and they were extended the right hand of fellowship, which is a Baptist tradition when new members join a church. And we were extended the right hand of fellowship by 5 Baptist congregations in the region, including the very first Baptist church in America in Providence. And so each of the ministers came to that service. And then shortly thereafter, we started trying to find a physical location to gather. And we tried the Congregational Church. They did not want anything to do with it. We met downtown over by City Hall in a school for a little bit. And then eventually were able to meet with the Unitarian Church, which was the second church in Worcester, for a time until we built our building right there on the Common.
I'm Carl Bjork. I've been a member of First Baptist Church for, I think, must be close to 70 years now. First Baptist Church has many benefits. My career was not centered within the city of Worcester itself. So my real center was First Baptist Church, where I met people who were part of the city, but allowed me to be part of what was happening, and yet I was really centered just here at the church.
Certainly when I went into ministry, the church was a very important piece of the community and a central part in many places, and the clergy had a loud voice in what was being determined in any situation, political or community-wide. that has, I think, changed. And I don't know that I would have predicted that, but it has happened, and that's not altogether bad, but it certainly is real. As far as the future of the church goes, it's very hard to know. I remember reading as a young student how small a part the church was in its beginnings, and what an important piece it became over the centuries, and that will continue to be, I think, a kind of leaven in the community for generations to come.
So one of the things that I think is really fascinating to look at when we think of the history of the church, where any church can get locked into tradition and what we've always done. Our church doesn't carry that weight as much in its current season and iteration, but you're talking about a church that started with 24 people and up against the odds, outsiders, underdogs, if you will, and they just wanted a way to worship freely with their particular beliefs as Baptists that were unique compared to some of the other churches in the area. And we see the church start to grow off the heels of the Second Great Awakening and other movements. And then you get into the 20th century, and you start to see the church become a bit more institutionalized. We started to have a lot of well-known people with influence in the city, whether it was the mayor himself or some of the titans of industry or other colleges and things like that. They became part of the church, and the church really kind of solidified as a very influential, significant type of institution in the city and beyond. And then you get to the 21st century, and we, on the heels of several decades of staggering decline in New England church affiliation and attendance, and our church was no different, have experienced that through that period of time. And you'll see we're kind of back to that underdog, outsider sort of sensibility and image, where people don't really think highly of Baptists, and there are a majority of people who don't identify at all with any religion. And so we're kind of back to that ragtag group in a way of we're going to do the thing we believe and care about. And that is energizing in itself. And that gives us a sense of purpose that I think is harder to do when you're much more institutionalized, formalized, and without disparaging the past. I think the temptation to get along with as many people of influence as you can is higher when they're a part of the congregation, and you want to keep that esteem. And when you don't have that in your current congregation, it's a lot easier to lean into the things you're very passionate about, that you are skilled at, and that you believe strongly about. And so I think that's an interesting connection to both parts of our past, to the very beginning and to that middle part, kind of that trajectory, the ebb and flow that comes with it. And so I think we have a lot of similarities with that first batch of Baptists in Worcester right now than we do that second batch.
I believe worship is important because it's a time of connection. It's a time of connection with God, with one another, with ourselves. It's a time where we can be challenged to go out into the world, to do justice and love mercy. It is a time when we are grounded, when we are nurtured, when we can be our true selves.
The aesthetics of this room are super Protestant, almost puritanical, austere, white colors and not a lot to distract you. But then they have these glitzy chandeliers like the Roaring Twenties, and I just love them, complete with tassels and crystal and everything. This sanctuary that we're in seats, I think, close to 900 people. And it's an enormous room, and it's a bigger room than what we need today. So we like to say that critical mass in this room is like 150, 200 people before you sort of feel like you have a crowd. but it makes you think. They say that the room always has the last word, and this room it's beautiful, it's elegant, it has an acoustic, it has beautiful instruments, it has an ornate kind of altar table with the cross and so forth. But regardless of what this room is like, the congregation still does what they do here. And our worship is beautiful. Our choir is robust, 25 to 30 in our chancel choir. But this room is used for so many more things than just our Sunday services. We have a partnership with WPI, and their music program meets here, their festival chorus. There are lessons that are taught here. There are many concerts and many different arts events that are held here. And we'll even host lectures and things for the Antiquarian Society when there's a particularly famous speaker, and they'll pack out the room. A lot of people will say, well, a church isn't a building, and that's true. But a building for a church is absolutely a part of the church's identity. It's absolutely a crucial element of what that congregation is. As an organist, the pipe organ here is part of the building. I mean, it's insured literally as part of the building. And if you didn't have this church, you wouldn't have this instrument. This instrument has accompanied many generations of people singing and participating in worship. That's something that comes from before our time, and it will persist after us, this incredible pipe organ. It's going to be a voice for this congregation for generations to come. And so that's worth taking care of and worth preserving. One of my favorite stories about the church and the building is that we have a fake belfry up there. It looks like there's a bell tower, but there isn't. And after the fire, we needed to rebuild, and so we built at Higgins' house on the lawn here by WPI. And the only stipulation was that the bell tower couldn't have bells in it because Higgins didn't want to be woken up from sleep. We love our connection with Worcester Polytechnic Institute. In fact, I just left there with my lunch. It's very close. We're basically on campus. And we have so many students who are in the church during the week. A lot of the music program meets in the church, the choir, and various a cappella ensembles. And we have a choral scholar program in our choir where some WPI students sing, and they're not section leaders. It really is a scholar position where they're learning from us, we're learning from them, and it's a great partnership. So we really value that. What's some stuff that's unique about like an old historical building like this?
A lot of interesting spaces and places to go, or crawl under, or climb up. You can get lost in this building.
Did you ever get lost when you started here?
Oh yeah, I've got lost a little bit. Not lost, but stand there and saying, "Where the heck am I going?" and turn around, especially when you're at night and there's nobody around, and you hear sounds, so you stop, and you say, "I know I'm alone. Where'd that come from?
I hope I'm alone."
I hope I'm alone.
You grew up in Worcester, and
Yep.
you probably saw this church, here and there, traveling around the city. And
Oh, many times, yep.
did you ever think, like, oh, I'm
Never.
gonna be running that church someday?
Never. I'm not running the church. I'm just helping to keep it going by fixing it up, calling construction people to fix it up. It takes more than me. It takes more than the pastor to run a church. It takes everybody. Everybody has to get involved if you want the church to keep going. You cannot read my mind and say, "Oh, Mark knows what's going on." No, Mark doesn't know what's going on all the time. Mark catches it because he's here all the time.
I am Reverend Catherine Blaisdell. I am one of the ministers on staff here at First Baptist Church, and I do a little bit of everything here, trying to make the altar look prettier on Sunday mornings and make worship more interactive and more kid-friendly in whatever ways we can. I have been a visitor to many churches around the country. When I was a kid, my dad was a regional minister, sort of like a bishop, and so we visited new churches quite often. And so I have a sense of what to look for. The doors being unlocked is a shockingly indicative one. The first time I sat down to worship at First Baptist, 5 years ago maybe, I was struck by how many of those things the church was getting right, and not in a we're the perfect church, come look at us sort of way, but in the like, the doors are open. There are people who are there to say hello to you when you come in. The welcoming and affirming stuff isn't just a little rainbow on the sign, but a way that this community really engages with people who are coming to visit. And so it was a church that really seemed to be walking the walk of trying to be inclusive and social justice focused. And so that was some of the first things that stood out to me. I developed this crush on this church of like just lovely people who were trying to do good in the world. And there was like this group of young adults that hung out up front that I thought were super cool, and maybe someday if I were cool enough too, I get to go hang out with them. And now I get to hang out with them, and it's just as cool as I thought it would be.
When we're in choir together, or Wesley is playing or another musician is playing, and I don't know, there are just times when it just lifts me up and connects me in a way that I can't put into words, but it connects me with the divine and just fills my soul and nourishes me. And hopefully that nourishment then allows me to go out and serve Christ in the world.
We do a lot of partnerships with our sibling churches around the city, choral festivals where we mass our choirs together and all come together sharing between our buildings. There's a lot of talent and passion in the sacred music community in Worcester, a lot of skill, a lot of good choirs, and so we really have tried to find our space within that mix, and even tried to be co-leaders of that space here in Worcester.
Now, of course, saying that, it doesn't mean that we're in decline. I think you look at the trajectories of the region, in particular for mainline Protestants, there's certainly a decline. But I bring up this earlier iteration of the church when it was founded, the origin story, because I think living into a bit more of that is what's helping us now to grow. And so we may not be busting at the seams like they did right after World War II, but we are seeing an increase in energy and giving from individuals, newcomers who are latching on and becoming a part of who we are, and expanding, enhancing, diversifying our identity, but also our impact in the community. So all of that speaks to momentum and growth. It's just not going to be on the level, maybe ever, of Second Great Awakening or First Great Awakening or, like I said, post-World War II boomers. But for this era, for this region, we are a success story in a lot of ways, not just by numbers, but because of what we're hoping to accomplish, what we're hoping to do by our energy and passions and values. We want to make a difference, whether it's going to city council and joining in with the community if they're protesting some injustice, or to advocate for something that we believe strongly about. There are different ways to do that, but then with all of our members' generosity, ways to give back to asylum seekers with English lessons or with supplies, whatever it may be, there are all kinds of different directions, and the energy that we have as a congregation is palpable, it's contagious, and it's something that I think speaks to what we believe and embodies it well, and I think that makes it a really wonderful place for me to serve, but for any of you to join in and attend.
This church is a really special place to work, not just because I'm from here and because I live close by, but because the community, the people are incredible. They love music, like they really do. And it's a very diverse group of people who bring different perspectives on spirituality, and there's not a lot of pressure here to feel any particular way about church and religion. It's just an open-minded group of people.
When I think of First Baptist Church in Worcester, I recognize so many changes here in this particular community. The change in emphasis, but I think it's all positive. I think this church right now stands as a real witness to its community, and it's caused some problems over the years, the recent years, There are people who have dropped out because of disagreement, but we gained some folks because I think the church is making a very positive statement in our world and in the society in which we find ourselves. And I'm proud to be part of the church, and I'm happy to say that.
When I graduated from college, I had every expectation that I would go change the world in some big systemic way. And so I thought that was going to be law school, particularly international law, because I was going to work for the UN and change things on a global scale. And I think in the decade and a half that it's been since then, I have in some way narrowed my sense of my own efficacy, but also come to really value the ways that taking care of individuals and communities matters to the bigger picture. So I still think about, from my time trying to study econometrics and be able to read policy papers with the best of them and, do the Harvard Kennedy School thing of policy analysis. I still find myself bringing some of those theoretical lenses to working in the church, particularly as we work towards social justice stuff, because I think quite often there has been a gap between what churches want to do out of a spirit of helpfulness and what might actually be helpful empirically. And so having a grounding in public policy is helpful for that. It also means that when some bit of nonsense comes from a politician, I not only have the theological grounding to combat Christian nationalism with true Christian rhetoric, I also can look at it and say that just doesn't make any sense for how people. And that's helpful for thinking about ways that we can best use our time and energy and expertise in building the beloved community that we want to see made real in the world around us.
First Baptist Church Worcester has to keep going because we have made a difference for hundreds of years now in this community, and our mission is not over, and in many ways may just be beginning because of what's happening in our country and in our world. And as I said, we are a safe haven, and that is so crucial and so important, and what I believe God wants us to be.